my beautiful people, to STR News and Digest, your go-to place for everything related to travel, the short-term rental industry, and the business of hospitality. Today, we're going to be talking about the shoulder season. I'm going to give you some hacks, whether you are a traveler or a host, on how to either take advantage of the shoulder season, or if you're a host, I'm going to give you some tips on how to try to cater to those people that are traveling in the shoulder season. We're also going to be diving deep into Airbnb's latest strategy. I talked about this before. They're doubling down on hotels. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about a new hotel that's for adults only, that's being that opens or premieres in 2026 in Punta Cana. I'm excited about that. I actually am going to be visiting that hotel as a travel agent. They sent me an invite to learn about that specific resort. Super excited. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and then we're going to talk about the border checkpoints that are going to be happening in October in Europe if you're planning to visit Europe. So without further ado, don't forget, hit that like button. And if you're not subscribed to this channel, subscribe. Do me a favor, drop in the chat where you are watching from. And at the very least, as always, at least say hi so we know you're there. If you're watching this in replay, do the same. Say hi, tell me where you're from. Or if you have any questions you can ask. Again, towards the end of the show today, I'm going to be answering questions from people. But without further ado, let's dive right in. And I'm going to give you a playbook, right? If you are a traveler, take advantage of shoulder season. Now, if you don't know what that is, that's the low season in the fall, right? With the exception of a very few places, the fall, for the great majority of the world, it's really slow season. There's a few places like in North Carolina. They actually, if I'm not mistaken, I remember talking to my boy over there in North Carolina from Blue Ridge, and I remember him telling me that in October, because this is the time when they had that big storm, the flooding last year, how I think 30% of their revenue comes from October, but that's rare because the majority of the world, September, October are really slow season. And for example, I'm going to be traveling to Europe now the first week of October, only because it's so cheap to travel there at this time, right? So here's a couple of things that if you're traveling and if you want to take advantage of these, your bucket list. Let's use that word. If you have a bucket list to go to Europe, to go to Asia, to go certain places like South America, even the Caribbean, September, October is the perfect time to travel, specifically midweek, right? If you're planning on leave midweek and return on a Saturday. Those are usually going to be your cheapest dates for travel. I'm going to give you an example. I am flying on, it's a midweek. I think I'm leaving on a Tuesday. I'm leaving on I'm leaving. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Let me double check this before I start saying something that's not true. Yeah, I'm leaving on Tuesday and I'm coming back on a Saturday. I'm flying business class from Miami to Madrid. And my ticket is $12.95 business class. That's a round trip ticket, extremely cheap, right? I mean, the last when I traveled in May, I think I paid $2,100 for a round trip ticket, and I didn't go to my original destination. So just keep that in mind. Be flexible on your travel dates, and you're going to get some cheap fares. The same applies to your hotel stays or your reservations. Now is the time, if you're going to be staying in the short-term rental, now is the time to be locating, using Airbnb, but don't book on Airbnb. Using Airbnb to locate the owner or the property manager of that property and negotiate your stays. Now is the time to do it. most hosts are open to negotiation uh, during this slow season because they need their properties booked. So perfect time to do that. Now, there's also, you know, when you book, and if you're going to book something in advance, right? Uh, and this is a very controversial topic I'm going to talk about because a lot of people say you're crazy. But book a refundable ticket, and here's why: because you're probably going to, because you're booking in advance. Yeah, you're going to get a discounted rate. It's going to be refundable, but it'll give you the opportunity to put an alert, because if the price drop, then you can cancel it and book your new price, book at the lower price. So that's a strategy that I have used and works really well. But it's heavily dependent on when you're traveling. I'm gonna give you an example. If you have to, even though I say this all the time, never travel in the summer, but if you have to travel in the summer, now is the time to go online and start booking, but make sure you're booking refundable and then setting an alert for that specific date or that travel route, right? So that if that price drops, then you can cancel your current reservation and then book at the lower rate. Um, let's see what else. Oh, here's some of the recommendations where I recommend you travel now, because you're going to get some really great deals. As I've already mentioned, Spain is one of them. I recommend you go to Spain. France is number 2. Greece, specifically the Isles, is number 3. The Algarve in Portugal will be 4, and the Amalfi Coast, right? The Amalfi Coast typically is expensive, right? But if you go now in October specifically, you're going to pay a lot less than if you go any other time of the year. I was just looking at the pricing for air travel in addition to accommodations. Man, they're cheap. And the weather's really not bad. You know, the Amalfi Coast, because it's in the coast and the Mediterranean there, the weather's actually kind of warm in the Amalfi Coast. If you go to Spain, depending on where you go in Spain, you go to France, depending on where you go in France, then it's going to be a little cooler, but it's not going to be super cold. It's actually going to be pretty nice. If you like fall weather, it's actually going to be really nice for you. Portugal is going to be still kind of warm, right? It's not, especially if you go to the Algarve, like I just mentioned, it's still going to be really nice. It's not hot like it is in the summer, but it's not going to be cool like you would find if you go to Madrid or certain parts of France and you know, in the northern part of France, right? Now let's talk about Europe, right? Starting October 12th, if you're going to, and I don't Google the specific areas because it's a specific region. You're going to have to do that ESTA visa requirement, right? They're gonna, what's required in some cases is to fill out that form, make sure you have that. But that starts October 12th. Hence why I'm leaving the first week of October. I mean October 1st, and I'm leaving Europe by the 10th. So here's a con when you go there now. Just keep in mind that the daylight is less, you know, so the day's a little shorter. So front load your activities. You know, save the museum and some food stuff later in the evening, or do all your outdoor stuff early on, because the days are shorter, and depending on where you go, the further north you go, the shorter the days are. So just to give you an example, sunrise is now in late, I think it's around 7:30, almost 8 o'clock is when the sun's starting to go up in certain parts of Europe. And the sun is going down early around 6 o'clock, right? So you're going to have, the day's going to be shorter. So front load that, right? Let's talk about host. If you are a host and you want to try to attract more guests, here's a couple of things that I recommend. And they're all going to be, not all, but a lot of the stuff is going to be about coming up with themes that you could market with. And there's that key word, right? Market, right? Because you need, marketing is going to be crucial if you want to increase your occupancy rate during the slow season, if you want people to come to you. One of the things that we're doing is called a 3-for-2 bundle. And that is for people that book, and guess what? During when? Weekdays, right? If they book for weekdays, they pay for 2 nights, they get that 3rd night free. That's one of the things we're doing. We're having some success with that. So think about some kind of combination like that, a 3-for-2, either 2-night stay, give that 3rd night for free, or anything more than 3 nights, give a late checkout. Just be creative with that, but offer something. So and give it an incentive for people to book. Here's another big one. Now is the time to do it, really. Start looking at your listings, or your listing if you only have one. Look at your pictures. How old are your pictures? I can bet that most of you have pictures that are older than 2 years on your listing if you've been around that long, right? So now's the time to switch pictures. One of the things that we do, and one of the things that I highly recommend everyone do, is have, especially if you live in an area that has seasons. You live in an area that has seasons, have pictures for each specific season and change the pictures as you're entering that season. For example, we're coming into fall. So for fall, have fall pictures, right? Anything related to fall, change the decorations in the house for fall. Same thing for spring, same thing for summer. Change the decor, change the pictures. Trust me when I tell you that makes a big difference, and that will allow you to stand out in this super competitive market. I've said this 1,000 times. Make sure you do that, right? Make sure you figure out how you can stand out. Next, it's going to be another thing that I highly recommend is to look to see if there's any special events and promote those events, right? Again, we're coming into fall, there's going to be a lot of, Halloween, pumpkin patches and all this other stuff that surrounds the fall. Find events, local events, and promote those events. Or if you don't have those events, create an event, right? Create some kind of fall event for your property and then promote that. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about there is staying on top of your pricing. Midweeks are the ones that are really, most of us struggle in occupying during the shoulder season, right? It's those mid stays. Consider lowering those prices significantly, so that you get something versus nothing. There's a lot of people that believe that, I would never price my property that low. I'd rather it be unoccupied. Well, I'm the opposite. I'd rather get something for a stay, because again, I can look to monetize that guest as they come through upsales. But more importantly, once they're in my ecosystem, I can retarget them. And that's the really important part that a lot of people miss. If you are a host, you really need to understand how important it is to retarget your current customers. Customer acquisition is the hardest thing for any business. I don't care what business you're in. Customer acquisition is the hardest thing. And once you have a customer, you need to keep that customer, right? You need to make, the way businesses become successful and the way individuals become wealthy is through loyalty via their customer base. Keeping that customer is going to be critical. So figure out how you can do that. Very important. So let's move on to the next thing. That's going to be for hosts, right? Now let's dive into Airbnb, as I talked about, right? If you follow Airbnb at all, you may have noticed that Brian Chesky was recently interviewed. And in this interview, he complained about Airbnb's growth. He feels that Airbnb isn't growing quick enough And I agree, right? But I think the entire industry, the short-term rental industry, uh, it's not that it isn't growing, it's that there is more people in this industry, right? Uh, I could, if we go back from the early days, right? Airbnb was the only OTA platform offering short-term rentals. And let me take that back. That's not true. It was Booking and it was Verbal, but in reality, Verbal and Booking they really weren't promoting short-term rentals. It was a really small segment of their business, right? In fact, Verbal really wasn't even it wasn't even their intention to make it a business, right? They just created that website for people in Colorado because it was a group of homeowners in Colorado. They wanted to rent out their properties when they weren't staying there because they were all vacation homes. So they created Verbal, right? And it grew to what it is today. They sold it to Expedia, and uh, and as the story goes on, right? But Airbnb was the primary OTA, and they had the majority of the market share. They still have the majority of the market share. The problem is that they're sharing that market to a lot of other OTAs. I mean, I can't tell you how many OTAs are out there today. Just off the top of my head, you have Marriott got into the game, Hyatt got into the game. You have Wednesday, you have Cabin something, I forget the last name. But there's literally hundreds of OTAs out there that are offering short-term rentals. Even in Florida, they have a specific market that offers short-term rentals. Most hosts that are like us, we have our own platform, right? We have our own website, our own direct booking site. So they're not growing as much as they like to grow because they're not capturing the market share that they were capturing in the beginning. So here's what they're doing. I talked about this last time. They are doubling down on hotels. Right? They're really, there was a report from Skiffs that Airbnb will do a pilot program on trying to acquire and partner with boutique and independent hotels. I can't tell you how critical and how I think if they're successful, that's the area in which they're going to go. They're not going to get into. They're not going to beat out the major chains, right? They're not beating out Marriott. They're not beating out Hyatt. But where they can make a big dent is on these small mom and pop operations, these boutique style hotels, and creating their own boutique style resorts, right? So they're making a big push on that. I've been talking about this now for over a year now on how if you are in the short-term rental game, that's where you need to be investing in. Forget investing in residential homes. Unless you're getting a phenomenal deal, I wouldn't invest in a residential home today because you're not going to make the money you were able to make a couple of years ago, right? The margins have gotten really small today. So if you want the margins to still be large and still be very profitable, you have to look into alternative stays, just like what we're doing in our vineyard in Georgia, just like what in Alabama. That's where you need to go. And that's Airbnb is going that route. And I think if you are a short-term rental operator, you should start thinking about that. Now let's talk about the resort that's opening up in 2026 in Punta Cana. If you guys heard of Secrets, Secrets is a chain of adult-only resorts. You'll find them in the Caribbean. You'll find them in Mexico. Very, very nice places to stay and spend some time at. They're building one, and it's going to open in 2026 as part of the Hyatt Inclusive Collection. It's called Secrets Macau Beach in Punta Cana. It's going to be an adult-only resort. There's going to be 406 rooms. There's going to be all-inclusive, and it's going to be right next to the Dream Macau Beach, And it's going to have 9 5-star hotels. It's going to be 9 bars, 3 pools, a convention center. It's going. If you look at the promotional material, the place looks phenomenal. And for me, what I like about it, it's an adult only resort, right? You know, I don't like going to resorts where there's a lot of kids. Uh, you know, I like to go and relax and do my thing, and you know, if I want to walk around naked, I can walk around naked, right? So this place looks phenomenal. I'm excited. I've been invited to their grand opening. I'm going to be going to this grand opening, learning more about the resorts. So stay tuned. If you're not subscribed to this channel, subscribe so that you can be the first to hear about this resort, right? That, my friends, is going to be it for now. I'm going to answer questions now. So, Lorena, do we have any questions?
Yes. So someone asked this. Why are Airbnb fees getting so high lately, and it is still worth booking? Booking in Airbnb compared with a hotel.
Okay, that's a great question. Number one, the fees. I talked about this during the last STR news. They're doing away for fees for guests. Now the fees are going to be paid by the homeowner, or in my case, by the property management company. We're going to be paying that fee going forward. But understand that because we're paying that fee, that's going to be trickled down to you. So that's number one. In terms of actual fees, you're not going to actually see that, but you are going to see an increase in the rates because somebody has to pay for it, and I'm not paying for it, right? So that's number one. But your question, is it still cheaper to stay in a short-term rental than a hotel? And the answer is it depends on your travel habits and who you're traveling with. So for example, if you're traveling by yourself or with just one other person, then most likely, and you're only going for a couple of days, then you're most likely going to pay less if you stay in a hotel. If you're going for an extended stay, like when I go to Europe, I usually go with my son, his girlfriend. I usually go with a small group. For us, it pays to stay at a short-term rental. It doesn't pay to stay in a hotel. In addition to that, because when I go to Europe, I stay there for 30 days. It also pays to stay to short-term rentals. Because when I book them with a washer and dryer, so I don't have to overpack like most people do, right? Most people overpack. I hate that. It's a pet peeve of mine. I only travel with a backpack. I like to be mobile. I like to be flexible. So that's me, right? So to answer your question, it depends on your travel habits and how you travel and with whom you travel, because it could be cheaper to stay in a short-term rental, but it also could be cheaper to stay in a hotel. It just depends. Next question.
Perfect. Someone asked, do people really book trips just from seeing them on TikTok? What do you think about this social media?
Man, I've been preaching this for a very long time. Hell yeah, right? Hell yeah. TikTok has become the #1 travel search engine, right? As well as Instagram. People will see something that, I raise my hand. I'm one of them now, right? When I'm going to a location, especially if it's a new destination that I haven't been to, I go to TikTok. I Google that. I search that area and see what people are publishing, see where people are going, see what people are eating, see, all that stuff. It's on social media. That's why if you are a host and you have a property, man, you better be on social media and you better be marketing that property, because that's what people are looking for. That's, this is the age today. Everybody's using social media to figure out what they're going to eat, where they're going to watch a movie. All that stuff is being done on social media today. So the answer is yes.
Perfect. Okay, we have one more question is like, I'm really interested in getting into the glamping business. How do you see this trend growing in 2015?
It is the future, people. And I'm gonna put glamping in the category of alternative stays, right? It could be, glamping could be defined in many different ways, right? It could be an eco hotel. It could be an actual glamping area. It can be a tiny home village. It could be a lot of different things, right? But it needs to be unique. And glamping is one of those areas. I talked about this before. Glamping, I don't know if it was in the last STR news or the one prior to that. I talked about how glamping has surpassed regular camping, right? The numbers have surpassed that. And the numbers are continually to climb quarter after quarter. So that's the future. If you're going to invest in short-term rentals, consider some kind of alternative accommodation, glamping being one of them, right? And I think it's by far, in terms of entry points, one of the easiest entry points to get in, right? Is to do that. Now, again, do your research, because a lot of areas today are not allowing you to create a glamping site. So just make sure when you're buying your land and you want to create this kind of alternative accommodation, make sure that it's allowed. All right, my beautiful people, if that was it, Lorena.
No, there is no more question, but there is like a comment. They say like, love the t-shirt you are wearing today. It's hot. It's good. It's cool.
Oh, okay. Oh, shit. I'm glad you reminded me. All right, listen, guys. I wore this shirt for a specific reason, and I almost forgot, right? This shirt.
At least someone see that.
Yes. I can't believe I almost forgot. All right. So this shirt. So I have another channel, right? It's What Hustle. If it has nothing to do with short-term rentals, but it's all about e-bikes and making money on e-bikes and all that. If you're interested in that, go to that channel and subscribe and watch some of that content. But that channel, this company, Patriot Crew, sponsors that channel. It is by far some of the best t-shirts that I have ever worn. And I'm not just saying that because I'm getting a monetary benefit from the shirt, because I purchased the shirts first. I used them, I liked them, and then I sent them an email to be an affiliate and or have them sponsor my channel, right? So I was a customer first. But if you can do me a favor, one of the reasons why I'm a big fan of this company is because of not only the quality of the shirts, but because of their mission statement and because of their charitable work. They take a portion of their proceeds and they donate it to veterans, specifically veterans that are struggling with mental health issues. As a veteran, that's near and dear to my heart, right? So as a result of that, I am pushing this company. I'm hoping that some of you guys would support me, support my channel, and support Patriot Crew, and consider buying either they have different types of t-shirts. I'm wearing this t-shirt because it's specific. I wore it for my What Hustle channel because this is part of their safety line. And as a cyclist, you need to be visible, right? And this is a bright neon yellow shirt. When you're riding down the road, you're going to be visible, and visibility is important for safety reasons for cyclists. So, but they have a variety of t-shirts. They have a summer collection, winter collection. But again, they're phenomenal shirts. I'm a customer. In fact, when I purchased the shirt and I put it on, I went to visit my son. My son recognized the shirt because he's a customer, right? So great quality t-shirts. Oh, and by the way, if you this is just a side note, I just want to talk about my grandson because I became a grandfather on Saturday, and my grandson, not just because of my grandson, he is a very good looking baby. Super proud of that baby. That baby has these t-shirts, right? Anyway, my beautiful people, again, please consider purchasing a t-shirt. The link is going to be in the description down below. Also, if you're interested in learning about e-bikes, go to my What Hustle channel and subscribe. All right, guys. Love you guys. I will see you on the next one.